Welcome to the Highest Health Podcast. Raise your health, elevate yourself, and enrich your life. Experience a world of health sovereignty. As you near your highest health, you near your most luminous self. The wealthy and prosperous people are the ones who identify themselves as creators. With that said, today's guest is Bryce Henson, the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, a gym franchise. One of my favorite qualities about Bryce is the depth of presence, passion, and purpose he shows up with. You can easily feel this in his energy and in the conversation that you're about to listen to today. Bryce and I met when our paths crossed during our time working for a career development company, helping young minds carve their dream careers out of life in a company fittingly enough called Dream Careers. It was an anomaly of a company with a great founder who not only prioritized investing in people, but bridged the gap between one's passion, career, and travel values. I mentioned this so that you have a greater context and understanding of our relationship and background as you listen to this conversation. And as you venture through this conversation, I encourage you to remember that wealth is a mental, emotional, and even spiritual story driven by our deepest beliefs, which run our daily behavior, creating our financial reality. Bryce's story does not start with wealth, but stems from breakthrough habits that breed the wealth mindset. I would even go as far to say that wealth is another realm of consciousness that you can foster through consistent mind, body, and spirit practices. This episode brings so much value, not only shining a light on financial wealth, but also experiential wealth, value of discipline, the role of health and fitness in wealth creation, and pushing past your comfort zone to uncover your own limiting beliefs. I hope you enjoy tuning in and get ready to embrace more wealth in your life.
Well, for me, like health is about frequency and vibration. I'm a feeler and I love people. I love to connect with people. When I'm living at my highest health, when I'm sleeping at least 7 hours a night, when I'm getting in my workouts consistently, when my nutrition's completely on point, when I'm getting my cryo plunge, a daily basis. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I'm a fitness professional. I've done a lot of good things, but I have my off days just like anyone else. So I want to also be very clear on that. But when I'm living my perfect life, when I'm living my perfect health, and I'm really investing in myself, it's the feeling, it's the energy, it's the vibration that comes from me, and it impacts and it bounces off others. And for me, that's just, there's no better feeling. I'm a feeler. And when I'm really, into my fitness mojo, I just feel blissful. And I guess that would be the best way to put it.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Highest Health. Today's guest is Bryce Henson. He is the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, a gym franchise. And he has a passion for spreading fitness to the world, in addition to mentoring fitness professionals on how to grow their business and change more lives in their local communities. And with growing your business comes growing your wealth. And that's the topic that I would like to pick Bryce's brain on today and emphasize in this episode with you, Bryce, is wealth creation and prosperity. The wealthy people and prosperous people that I know, Bryce, all sort of resonate with this concept of creation. So I want to know, was there like a moment in time where you realized in your life that you too can be wealthy and become prosperous. I don't know if there ever was like a specific time
There
where.
is, there is, and I'll jump in. It goes actually way back. Before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Natasha. It's been awesome reconnecting, and for our audience and listeners, Natasha and I worked together at a previous career for quite some time, many years, and it's just been cool to see you shine and come full circle and be on your podcast today. So thank you so much for having me on.
It's such an honor to have you on, Bryce, and thank you for coming on. And likewise to you, it's been awesome seeing you expand in this space and sort of be like-minded in values. But yeah, we had some fun times in managing global internship programs. And even since those days, I always admired your work ethic and your framework of thinking. So I acknowledge you back.
Awesome. Well, thank you. But to the topic at hand, which is wealth creation abundance, I think it goes hand in hand, especially, being a really focused at my fitness and the fitness industry. So all great stuff. It actually goes back when I was a young kid, and it's a story that is a blessing, actually disguised as a tragedy. But my father was a drug addict, alcoholic, and addicted to gambling. Not necessarily the trifecta for a good family upbringing.
Wow.
Yeah, but my first house was I say house in loose quotations. It was actually a trailer in a trailer park in Southeast Georgia. And I share this with you just because, there's probably many of you listening to this that come from challenging situations. And I think, it's just about rising up and overcoming those adversity. But for me, on one hand, there was a challenging situation, but thankfully we got out of that situation when my mom, escaped my father's grasp. But what I learned in that process was, wealth is definitely a conscious thing. And my father, while he had all these issues, he didn't have a lot of money, clearly, but he actually had a little bit of inheritance. So our childhood was very volatile. Most times we didn't have money, but then he had an inheritance and we had money for a little bit of time. So for me, it was kind of this elusive thing. And then finally we moved to the state of Michigan, out of his grasp to, get to a better situation. Thankfully, my grandma took us in. We lived with her for the better part of 10 years while my mom kind of got her feet on the ground being a single mom. And going through that experience, I saw a really challenging situation financially for my family, but then I saw abundance a little bit once my father hit the inheritance. But then it went, also down the roller coaster again when we got out of his grasp and then lived in Michigan. So I had a few different looks at that particular experience. And then I guess to put a bow on this aspect of the story, which I'll be able to provide you a little bit more insight on why I thought this way, is when I moved to Michigan out of that situation. We used to run on money before we used to run on a month, very humble beginnings for first world standards. But I had an uncle who was a wealthy uncle, very frugal uncle at that. And he didn't support our family, meaning my mom and two siblings financially, but he really invested or really thought highly of schooling and investing in education. So my family actually and my siblings, I should say, went to a private school, which made no sense because the socioeconomic, situation that we were in compared to my friends was completely different. I knew something didn't really add up on how we went to this school, yet we were living kind of hand to mouth. But I learned later in life, my uncle actually funded that education. But for me, seeing that dichotomy was actually really important, basically in the youth with my father, and then, into my teenage years, and a little bit older with my mom, my grandma, and my uncle. And I feel blessed actually that I saw the contrast. I saw what it was like to have, not have, and then I saw what it was like to have. And I feel many kids who, get brought up in poverty and whatnot, they only see poverty. They don't see abundance. So for me, I actually had the visibility of, I knew what it was like to see abundance. My friends had abundance. In fact, I have a beautiful house. I'm so grateful to this day. My wife knew it was the house for us when she went to the garage and there was epoxy floor in the garage floor. And the story is one of my buddies in school, he had epoxy floor, like the floor that you see like Jay Leno with all of his cars, you can literally eat off the floor. And Natasha, when I was 8 years old, I remember turning to my mom and being like, I want to be so wealthy one day that I have a garage floor that's epoxy. So
wow.
For me, I had that visibility of what wealth could look like. But on the flip side, comparison is a thief of joy. So it was also very challenging in your youth to, think that all your friends had everything and you didn't. So that was actually a good thing, though, in the long run, because of what it really created. It created a goal, it created visibility, it created a mindset that I could have this. I just need to put a lot of work in. And I think Natasha really kind of putting a bow on this. That's where the framework came. That's when really I made the choice that, hey, I'm going to be a man of means. I'm going to be wealthy. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but it really was implanted with me at a young age.
That's such an inspiring story. So incredible that it sort of all came full circle with that epoxy floor. Like gives me the chills, just like when you bought your home and the garage had an epoxy floor. I only know that material from surfboards, but congratulations.
Thank you. It all comes full circle. But I think there's a lot. There's a great takeaways there. It's just about vision and about things coming full circle, and just a very serendipitous situation. So thank you.
Absolutely. Did you have any role models when you were younger for wealth aspiration, or was it just seeing the duality between these different realms of sort of like poverty, having a little bit of money, and then not having it? Because that's kind of interesting. A lot of kids will grow up without money, but they don't have like these influxes of time where money comes and then it goes. It's usually just more consistent with either wealth or poverty. So I don't know if there was a person or a TV show or something that inspired you, or was it just seeing the difference?
Well, I think both actually. Seeing the difference was a huge contrast, and that was really instrumental into my development. But then, growing up, I actually in the state of Michigan, you have to be 14 to get a part-time job in the state of Michigan to file taxes and all that. But I found a loophole. You can actually referee soccer when you're 12 years old, and you can actually enroll in the course to become a certified referee when you're 11 years old. So, literally 11 years old, I was already thinking when the shakeup happened when we moved from Georgia with my dad to Michigan with my mom and my grandma. When that happened, it was very traumatic in one way, and it really provided a lot of alertness, if you will, and awareness to the wealth accretion focus that was be embarked on over the next few decades. So that was a huge. I guess seeing that contrast was very pivotal to me. But then to your point, after I got certified to become a referee, I started making money when I was 12 years old, 13 years old. So I started receiving a little bit of income. Now, it was a very small amount of income in the grand scheme of things. But when you're 12 years old and you're making $15 for a soccer game, that was a lot of money compared to my friends. So I ended up investing in a book called The Motley Fool, which kind of talked about, investment strategies. And then probably the two biggest books that I read when I was maybe 13 or 14, very controversial figure he is nowadays, but Mr. Donald Trump and The Art of the Deal. And he talked about basically, how business is is both an art and a science. And really, I gleaned a lot of foundational learning about the creativity of, creating wealth. And then the other book that really had a big impact on me was authored by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And interestingly enough, in that book, he shows the contrast of having a rich dad and then having a poor dad. His poor dad was his biological dad. His rich dad was his friend's dad. So in a weird sort of way, I kind of had that experience, all within one family.
Amazing. And you were awfully young, like 11 or 12 years old, to be reading those books. I feel like that's such a kind of like an advantage for any young kid to have that sort of content in front of them. So really cool. I love Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then Mr. Donald Trump. Like, if he's not the epitome of wealth creation, I don't know who is.
Totally. So.
Yeah. So how did you get into the fitness space? I know, and you're far more than just fitness. You talk nutrition and lifestyle and discipline. So I'm curious how and why you chose this as an avenue to add value and create value for yourself.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think we already covered the fact that at a young age, I realized that, hey, I wanted to be a man of means. I wanted to create abundance and wealth. I just didn't know exactly what path I was going to take. And even to this day, I say if I only was focused about wealth generation and creating income, I would probably go into high finance or investment banking or something along those lines. And there's nothing wrong with those careers. But for me, what I realized, it lacked purpose. It lacked intention. It lacked like a big mission. And kind of coming full circle, which I'm so excited to be on this podcast today because our past and careers have intertwined. But you and I used to run a career development program called Dream Careers, and that's actually
Mhm.
what took me from Michigan to California. So when I was a senior in college, I got an internship within Dream Careers, came out to Los Angeles, ended up becoming a full-time career for both of us. And I lived in LA for the better part of probably 10 years after that. And when I got to LA, I was excited, to be in California, the palm trees, the beaches, the blue skies, all that LA has to offer. But
Right.
I also realized that LA can be the plastic capital of the world when you're 21 years young,
Yes.
3,000 miles from home, you're not fit, you're not active, didn't have a lot of confidence. So what I really realized quickly is like, oh man, I want to actually get fit. And maybe a couple of years after moving to LA, a fortuitous situation happened. One of my best friends, who was my first fitness mentor, he moved out to Southern California, and we lived together. And that was really my first introduction to fitness,
Mm.
to lifting weights, circuit training, clean eating, and really over a period of 2 years, but hyper focused 6 months, he put me on a program, and I stripped 20 pounds of body fat. I put on 20 pounds of lean muscle, but way more importantly, that Natasha, I changed my life. In fact, my sales career, my coaching career at Dream Careers kind of went through the roof. I became a great internship coordinator, and I think only really one thing had changed. It was just the energy, the output, the enthusiasm I had because of fitness, and that was really the foundation of my fitness transformation and journey. And that's really what set the intention that later on, within a couple of years, I wanted to actually become a fitness professional, gym owner, and that's really what set the foundation.
Amazing. So you credit becoming healthier and pursuing fitness as an avenue that changed your energy and essentially allowed you to access financial success, becoming really good at your job and placing students in internships.
1,000%. And the proof is in the pudding, in the sense that I was, working as an internship coordinator for the company Dream Careers, which we talked about, for a couple of years. I think it was 2 years before I started my fitness transformation. And if you look at actually the career trajectory, like my level of success, the biggest success I had was in year 2 to 3, when really I got fit. Because when I got fit, I just showed up differently. My energy, my
Mm.
enthusiasm, my connective, my confidence really escalated. And without a shadow of a doubt, that was the foundation, for my career, but also wealth creation. And even looking at some statistical data, which there's been a lot of data with COVID and, all the stuff that has happened over the last few years. But I recently read a study that a person who's fit, okay, who takes care of themselves physically and is in good shape, not overweight or not obese, makes over 28% higher income on an annual basis
Wow.
than the person who's overweight or obese. And to me, that there's a huge connection there, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And sometimes when coaching clients come up to me and say, "Hey, Coach Bryce, I can't afford to be fit," Natasha, I say, "Oh my goodness, you can't afford not to be fit. Literally, this will be life changing." So that's why I definitely know in my bones they are connected for sure.
That's so fantastic to hear. I definitely share a similar belief. And I think that it's all intertwined, like the health of us, the wealth of us, and just the energy and value that we give to the world and we receive to the world. Everything is connected, and you can't piecemeal it. Like once you start focusing on specifically your health, like other areas of your life begin to change, and you do become wealthier. You do have a different energy, and you do just show up and receive abundance in ways that you could not have imagined before.
Totally. And even on that point, because I mean, my mindset when we were talking offline, it's like, okay, wealth creation, financial abundance, but there's a lot of other abundance and success that you can achieve in life that's not just financial, although that's an important part. And actually, to that point, after going through that experience, and also too, as a fortuitous situation, working with Dream Careers, having an awesome leader willing to, support his teammates to travel the world, but through my newfound look at fitness, because of the confidence that I acquired, I began to look at myself differently, and then started to travel with you and the rest of our team, and ended up going to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil for a holiday with a couple of our former colleagues and friends to this day. And then it ended up becoming a full-time gig where the founder of the company let me live there for 2 years in an island in the very south of
Wow.
Brazil called Florianopolis. And there is no way I would have ever moved to Brazil, learned a foreign language, met an awesome girl, bring back a Brazilian family, if I didn't have a strong level of foundation of fitness, which then opened up financial abundance in life, but it opened up experiential abundance in my life as well. So there's just many ways you can actually look at it from my perspective, Natasha.
I totally agree with that. And the fiscal aspect is just one component, but the experiential aspect and just the way you view the world and you receive different experiences, you receive your experiences on a far deeper level, not on a superficial level. And you just learn to be far more present. And there's a level of passion that is not there if you are unhealthy, you know?
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Bryce, what do you think is the reason why some people sort of like sabotage wealth or any potential for wealth? Like there are some people who, you know, the classic scenario is like you win the lottery and 6 months later they're broke again. So I would love to hear your thoughts on why this is the case. And yeah, I would love for you to share.
Yeah, that's an incredible point. And I always look at it as a mindset more than anything, being wealthy or being poor, or excuse me, there's a difference, I should say. Let me take a step back and articulate. There's a difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is a temporary state. In fact, Natasha, I've been broke vast majority of times in my life, but that's just a temporary state. But being poor, okay, or rich for that matter, is a mindset. And I always say I've been broke most of my life, but I've never spent a day poor. And I think that's a really distinct analogy. The same way you can view this, or to put a bow on that, that's the exact reason why someone who is broke and poor wins the lottery, has never developed any financial muscle, has never taken any interest in, being conservative or fiscally conservative with their finances, consuming less than they produce, investing their money. So if the person's never done this, okay, they're both broke and poor, and then they get a windfall of money. Well, that money, that their mindset has not changed. It's just a temporary, it's going to continue, it's going to leave, because while they had money in the moment because they won the lottery, from their mindset perspective, they're still poor. And another example you can equate that to is the fitness industry. People always want, lean framework. They want, have muscle and definition. They want the six pack. Okay. But if you actually had a magic wand, okay, and a coaching client walked up to you and said, "Hey, Natasha, I've been dying to get a six pack. I know I'm 100 pounds overweight. I literally eat Twinkies and donuts." And of course I'm exaggerating here, every day. But can you give me a six pack? Now, if you basically swipe that magic wand and gave that person a six pack, that's great. Okay. Now they have a six pack. At the end of the day, though, they're going to lose that six pack very, very quickly because they have not developed the mindset around being fit and being healthy, et cetera. So as you can see in those two examples, I gave you a temporary state, okay, being broke, whereas like the eternal state is either being poor or rich. And I think at a surface level or even a foundational level, that's why most people, if they, get a windfall of money, but they've never actually taken the time to invest in themselves, invest in their financial education, or invest in their health or their physical education, whether it's the example of the lottery or whether it's the example of a magic wand, you get a six pack, eventually that's going to fade. It's going to fade quickly unless from a mindset perspective, you change.
Excellent. On that note of mindset, I often see that people are in a certain framework of thinking, but they don't realize that they're in that framework of thinking. But in some ways, they are aware of, the things that they desire, whether it is a six pack or making six figures or more, however, a year, a month, whatever it is. But sometimes they're in this way of thinking that they don't really know that they're in it. And I wonder, do you have any practices to help people sort of shake themselves loose of that, or just create a bigger, awareness of their way of thinking?
Yes. Incredible question. And I'm still learning about myself. I'm actually going to be vulnerable and share a story with you if you're open for it, just to give you some visibility to blind spots. But to answer your direct question, there's three ways, and it all, goes about shifting your perspective. So number one, when you travel, when you push your comfort zones, when you put yourself in a unique place or different experience that you're not accustomed to, your mind actually has to process that new perspective in a different light. And many times you can actually have a lot of breakthroughs that you normally normally wouldn't in your day-to-day routine.
Mm,
And I'm a day-to-day routine guy. Like routine is actually a great way that I've manufactured a lot of success, but it is important, every month or every quarter, every few times a year to push yourself, get yourself out of your comfort zone. That perspective will provide a lot of clarity. The second is journaling. And I never used to do
mm,
this, but as I've started to journal and write down my thoughts, it's been really, really eye opening to process some thoughts that have really been deep in my psyche. And actually it goes hand in hand because I first started journaling because of my therapist. So I've been,
mm,
recently actually started seeing his name's Dr. Kevin, awesome guy. And
mm.
I look at it from a fitness perspective. We all need, fitness coaches or health coaches. I need a mental coach as well, just like most
Right.
people. So seeing Dr. Kevin, his calls to action to me was to actually write down how I felt in this particular moment. And between doing these three things, it's provided a lot of clarity. So those are the three strategies: travel, journal, and, get a mindset coach or a therapist. Those are the tangible takeaways. And to finish out from a more soft and perspective and give you some insight, I'll be vulnerable, but it was so weird. I just uncovered this, and I started in the podcast that I come from a quote unquote broken home as a blessing disguised as a
Right,
tragedy.
right.
But my father was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and there's this common symptom of children that grow up with parents that are addicts or alcoholics, and it's typically of neglect. Now, to my
Mm,
mom's credit, she gave me so much love and care, which is amazing, but I never received that from my father. And candidly, I didn't actually know that showed up till this day. But
mm.
really, the child of an alcoholic or someone in their care typically receives a lot of emotional neglect because that person is in the addiction or whatever the case may be. So subconsciously, I've had this feeling of neglect for a period of time. And I brought this up because sometimes to my wife, who loves and adores me, I love and adore her. It's like a best relationship. So awesome. Of course, we have our ups and downs, so nothing's utopic, but ultimately a really solid relationship for the vast majority of times. And she loves me dearly. And she literally packed up her life, moved 7,000 miles away. Like literally, I feel like I hit the jackpot. So lucky. And this is not true, but sometimes they'll be like, babe, you don't love me as much anymore. And I would kind of, engage in conversation like this. And maybe she was busy or she was preoccupied, and she couldn't focus me in the second. And I've noticed I've said that, quite a few times over the past like year or two, not overly frequent, but a frequent enough where when I was processing this with Dr. Kevin, he's like, Bryce, this is showing up in neglect because,
Mm.
from a neglection perspective, you're probably feeling neglected, whatever the case may be. So honestly, Natasha, and that's really vulnerable. And this only happened like in the last 30 days. But for
Wow.
me, just to be able to provide more acknowledgement of what you said about we have blind spots and how do you tap into like your thoughts, I just had a big breakthrough of something of my childhood. So we all do. If you're listening to this, whether you had an addict as a parent or whatever your situation is, we all have our burdens. I would really encourage you to travel, gain some perspective, journal. Get a health coach or a mental coach or a therapist. If you're anything like me, you'll have a lot of breakthroughs that will really benefit you in your life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think that was really powerful.
That's a lot.
And yeah. And also congratulations. I didn't know that you're a married man now, but
Thank you.
congratulations. I met your wife and she is a fantastic woman. So really happy to hear that. But getting back to the topic, I love that approach because I feel like once we think we know it all and we are just we know our minds and we're like just so aware of ourselves, that's when we stop growing. So I feel like we have to always have that framework of like, oh no, I need to pursue these practices to keep discovering and unraveling these subconscious thoughts that are just dormant and we don't know that they're holding us back. But once we reveal them, we're like, oh wow, I feel so much freer and feel like so much more I guess able to create and expand and just grow. So I love that approach.
Well, I think what you said that really just resonated with me, Natasha, is like a freer. And it was just so
Yeah.
weird. I don't even know why. And granted, it wasn't like a daily thing. It's actually embarrassing, actually admitted what I just shared with you. But really, as I look back at it, and I didn't really understand where that was coming from. It was just kind of this like habitual thing, I would say
Mm,
now and again, especially when, that maybe she was busy or I was busy, whatever the case may be. But basically processing that and having a clear understanding, what you said is about freer. I felt like, oh my goodness, like I am freer freer now. Like I have a better understanding of me, and it was like almost like the weight of the world off my shoulders. So I couldn't agree with you more on that point.
So glad to hear it. Yeah, I feel like that's the feeling that a lot of people are searching for, is just like this freedom. And yeah, it's important to prioritize it. So I know another concept that you talk about is that wealth is in the relationships. And I would love for you to expand on that and give our listeners an idea of what you mean by it and perhaps how it could serve them.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, kind of breaking it down, I'm a people person. I'm a student of leadership. That is my bet, definitely my strongest quality that I've characteristic that I've acquired and skill set to date. But I still have a long way to go. And I think there's a famous adage, leaders are learners. So you always have to be learning and growing, and taking people and yourself on a destination to a better place. What I've learned about, investing in people and leading people, and seeing business is many times, and it's part of human nature, it's short-term thinking. We're wired evolutionary to make sure that like our short-term needs are satisfied, because who knows when the long-term needs will be met or needed to be met. But really now in a time of abundance, because we are living in a time of abundance, no matter what it feels like, compared to the rest of the time in human history,
Right,
we
right.
do live in abundance, and we can plan out and we can have certainty and trust in the, relationships that we have and the familial ties that we have. So we can plan out our lives relatively, strongly. So, there is, I guess, a big criticism on short-term thinking. And really, when I think of short-term thinking, I think of very transactional, I guess, ways to approach whether people or business. So when you're looking at a transactional situation, I always say there's money in the transaction, because there is money in any transaction. That's how their economy goes. But many times, there's way bigger long-term wealth in maintaining and developing and nurturing long-term relationships. And that might mean it being you get the short end of the stick if you're going to provide a concession or some sort of value. It might mean that short term, that's actually not the best situation for you. But long term, if you really value the people that you're working with, if you value the culture of your business, if you value your clients at a deep level, you're more likely to take a short-term loss, knowing that if you invest in the relationship long-term, that will definitely be where the wealth resides. So I use it as a framework for business. I use it as a framework for leadership. I use it as a framework for growing companies. And sometimes, my leadership team will look at me and say, Bryce, I think we're giving up a little too much here in the moment. And if you look at it specifically from a transactional perspective, yeah, I might agree. But long term, if we give that concession and that, employer or that client or that vendor is really, really excited to work for us the long term, well, guess what? We're all going to win collectively. So that's why I put a lot of value on people and I put a lot of value on relationships.
Amazing. So one of the main points I'm hearing here is to think long term and not short term. And then I feel like there's a lot of like you are kind of shutting down any fear-based thinking with that approach, where some of your peers and leadership team might say you're leaving a lot on the table, but they're sort of coming from a fear-based mindset. So you're kind of looking at it from a non-fear-based mindset.
An abundance-based mindset. And
Abundance, yeah.
yeah, totally. And I was critical specifically in my team. My team is awesome. Like the reason
Right,
I'm sitting here for
right.
you today is because my team is so incredible. But my job as a CEO of the business is to be the head coach of the business as well. And that's exactly it. And I think we are wired, okay, from a fear-based mentality. We are wired, okay, not to think that there's so abundance, because that's actually from an evolutionary perspective, that's more to our advantage. So it is a symptom of, evolving and growing as people, but really, and it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It definitely is hard to look at it, and it's acquired skill. But if you start looking and playing the long game, if you start investing in long-term people, if you start looking at, the abundance on the other side of that fear, in my experience, it's benefited me so much. And that's, typically how I lead and how I like to communicate and really treat people.
Amazing. I really value that approach. How does discipline show up for you in your in your approach to success and giving and receiving value?
Oh, I love that. I have many, many, many faults. I would say discipline is one of my strengths. We talked a little bit about, the freedom aspect just a few moments ago. For me, and I think I learned this from a gentleman named Jocko Willink, who was a retired U.S. Navy SEAL who actually lives in San Diego, just like you. And he was famous on using the quote, discipline equals freedom.
Mm,
And actually, one of my core values, personal core values, is freedom. I
mm,
really love, the country that we live in. I love having the autonomy to, do the things that I want to do. But on the other side of freedom is responsibility, and on the
mm,
other side of freedom is discipline. From my perspective. So, for me, discipline is mission critical. It's important for leadership. It's important for any successful organization, any successful person to acquire a high amount of it. I also know that it's a muscle that gets stronger with time. So I can tell you very candidly, I am way more disciplined now, Natasha, than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So if you're listening to
mm,
this and you're like, I know I need to be disciplined, well, realize that, okay, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Take one step, put one step in front of the other, and say you're not disciplined on your wake up time or your working out schedule, or maybe there's like 15 things you're not disciplined.
mm,
Instead of thinking, oh my goodness, my life's array, think, okay, what is one thing that can really put a lot of focus in and then get disciplined? Maybe it's not eating the perfect nutrition plan ever, but maybe it's actually avoiding McDonald's 3 times a week. If you
mm,
can literally just cut down your fast food by 3 times a week, let's start there. And then once you stack a win, maybe you do that for a month or 2 months or 3 months, then you actually start building the discipline muscle. And then you're like, okay, what else can I do? Now I'm going to wake up 30 minutes early. Okay, great. Let me attack that for the next 90 days. Get that, stretch that discipline muscle or flex that discipline muscle. So for me to kind of put a bow on that and the overall topic, discipline equals freedom. Discipline is the foundation for success of any personal organization. And it's important to really, become a disciplined person. But again, it's a muscle that can be developed and trained over time, which is really a big call to action.
incredible. Do you have any discipline practices that you pursue daily to sort of reinforce this idea of staying disciplined?
I
And
do actually,
yeah.
and it's a wild one. But first one's pretty standard. I work out every day. I'm not doing 3 hour Olympic lifts or CrossFits, but I do a
Mhm,
35-minute circuit every day, just to kind of get the blood moving and get my mental energy on point. And of course, it
mhm,
it's good for the mind, body, and soul. But secondarily, and this is a new discipline over the last year and a half. But 5 out of 7 days, not quite seven, but I do a 3-minute cold plunge, really cryotherapy, and I have a cold plunge tub. I used to just do it in my pool, which is pretty cold enough, even in the Southern
yeah.
California summers. But now I have a cold plunge. So for 3 minutes a day, I subject myself to 44-degree water. And I do not want to do it. I literally, every single morning when I wake up, I'm like, I'm not going to do it today. And then I end up doing it because I have, worked on my muscle of discipline to execute it. But for me, that really sets the tone. It shows me who's in control. My mind's in control, not my
Mm,
body. And man, I wouldn't have it any other way.
incredible. So circling back to wealth creation, is there ever a point where you think you're going to feel like I've made it, like this is enough? Or do you think this is just something that drives you and is more so like just something that you're doing like out of play? Like, because I feel like sometimes, there's you could just keep doing things and you're like, when is there enough? But maybe like it doesn't exist. So I'm curious, what your thoughts are on that.
Natasha, you are a wise soul. These questions are incredible. And it's a question I've thought about, I've contemplated a lot as of late.
Mm,
And reason being is what really came to the surface was I just took a trip to Manila in the Philippines. We have a
mm,
remote teammate there. One of my assistants is there, and we've created this awesome placement program where we support. Where we assign different remote teammates to support one of our gyms in North America to really help with their business operations. So it's an awesome
mm,
program, and I was there for a week, and it was an incredible experience. Met my team there, and I came back, and of course, the Philippines is a third world developing country, beautiful country, but very poor country in the
mm,
grand scheme of things. And I walked back in my house, and the first thought that I had was, Bryce, you ungrateful person, you live in a palace. And I never, like, that thought did not occur to me, for the
Mm,
last year or so, or a year and a half before moving in this house. And I think that's just a symptom of, always wanting more. And I think evolutionary, we're wired that way. But I think there's something to be said about, being content with enough. I have not
mm,
figured that out yet. So I'm not sitting on my high horse and preaching you on
yeah.
how I get there. What I do know is I practice Stoic philosophy, and Stoic philosophy is a practice about, understanding what's in your control, what's not in your control, focusing completely on what's in your control. Also having understanding of taking whatever comes at you in life as a challenge or adversity and actually making that as a benefit. And there's a lot of the things they, talk about in Stoicism about, not always wanting, not always thinking you need something else to be happy. Can
Mm,
you be happy in the moment?
right, right.
So for me, I follow this gentleman named Ed Milet, and he talks about this concept of blissful dissatisfaction. And
Mm,
for me, that actually is more in line with something I can strive for. So dissatisfied, okay? Dissatisfied is where the hunger comes from, the want comes from, the growth comes from, the desire for more
mm,
abundance comes from. So that dissatisfaction, but can you do it in a very blissful way? Can you be at peace with the fact
hmm,
of, hey, I'm always going to, have goals and dreams and aspirations, but I can also take a step back and smell the roses, as the
mm.
saying goes. So to that point, Natasha, I haven't figured all this out yet. It's been something that's literally been in the back of my mind for the last like 6 months, and especially coming back from my trip to the Philippines when I had this like eye-opening experience, and I was like, "You ungrateful person, Bryce! Like, you live in a palace, and honestly, like you're always trying to do more and acquire more and be more. Like,
Right,
can't you
right.
can't you take a chill pill and be okay?" And I think there's something to be said to that.
Absolutely. And I think an important aspect of that is I think the avenue in which we pursue the creation of more and the creation of more value for ourselves and others, it's like, are we doing it solely for ourselves or are we doing it also for the good of others? So I think part of that is being able to balance your pursuits with the needs of the world. So in that sense, it's like your work is never finished.
Ooh, I just picked up a big golden nugget from you. And maybe if you look back at why I'm so passionate, fitness is it gave me a really big gift. And
Mm,
that's why I'm really passionate to give that out. And it genuinely fills my cup. And it does for, many people in the industry that are really passionate about fitness or whatever it is, to be able to give that gift back. So I'm definitely aligned with you there.
absolutely. Awesome. So do you know of any or like do you follow any universal laws to wealth that you discovered to be true in your uh
For
success?
for sure, the number one wealth, and this was always intuitive,
Yeah.
but it sounds so basic, but people don't do it.
Mm,
Produce more than you consume,
mm,
and then save and invest the difference. I'm
mm.
going to say it one more time: produce more than you consume, and then save and invest the difference. And I would say, from if you were to sum up my success from a financial or business perspective, I don't want to oversimplify it, but honestly, Natasha, I think you can frame it in that one liner. I've always tried to produce way more than I consume,
Mm.
and then I save, and then I invest whatever I have over, and I just continue to do that over and over again. And that's actually how I've created abundance in my life, both financially and experiential.
Amazing. I often find that like when you pursue these avenues where um your goals are growth, your goals are to add value, your goals are to discover new ways of like fulfilling your own potential, that you sort of have to let go of other parts of life. And it's almost like this dance between like wanting to belong and then also wanting to pursue more and just experience more abundance. Do you ever have that experience? And if so, how do you manage it? It's a little bit of a long-winded question, but
Yeah, no worries. And you'll have to I want to be able to give you the answer you're looking for. Can you maybe articulate in a different way? I didn't
yeah.
fully grasp exactly how you want me to answer.
Yeah. So sometimes like what I find is like when I pursue certain expansions, like whether it's wealth or health, like there's this aspect of social belonging that I have to let go of, you know?
Oh,
And
yes.
so I would love to hear your experience with it and how you manage that.
Oh, wow. That's such an incredible question. And I can give you two examples of this in my life over the last 15 years. And
Mm,
one, it was in 2007 when I, kind of told you the story about, moving to California and getting fit and all that. It's interesting when you start taking a focus at your health and fitness, many times people will judge you, not maliciously, but
hmm
they feel actually bad making their own choices. So they try
mm,
to basically like, you don't need to eat that protein or chicken salad. Here's that cupcake. Here's that sugar. Here's that, this, that, and the other. And I
right,
found it,
right.
I found it really interesting when I first started getting fit, and I felt it frustrating. It's like, doesn't everyone get it? Like, I'm trying to get fit right now. I'm not fit. I'm really trying to go on this big, challenge. But
Hmm
every time I go out, people are like, take it easy, or, don't eat that food, or eat this food and that food.
Yeah.
And it's really the social pressure, because really when you break it down, when you start to level up your life, and it could be fitness, nutrition, finance, whatever the case may be, when you start living to a higher standard, what happens is it makes people feel uncomfortable, because then it
Mm,
showcases a light at them and saying, well, maybe I should put down this cupcake, and maybe I should pick up this protein
mm,
shake. And they don't tell you that in plain English, but it's,
right.
that social pressure, if you will. So it came to a point where I just realized I was like embarrassed I was eating healthy food and all that. And eventually you just get over it, and you just got to realize, this is who I am. This is the direction I'm going. And this is, who I want to be. And I have to, cast aside my old beliefs in order to get to a better situation. So that would definitely be one. Similarly, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I don't even know if I've chatted with you about this, Natasha,
Mm-mm.
about in the end of 2016, I stopped drinking alcohol. And I was never the type of alcoholic who would drink daily, or, homeless or under a gutter, which many unfortunately are. For me, it would be like the binge drinker. So I wouldn't drink for the
Mm,
week. And then on the weekend, when I'd have a drink, and I would overshoot the mark. And what I realized is, when I stopped drinking, it made people feel uncomfortable when I'm
mm.
out and about. And it was probably somewhere in my head as well, especially for the first 6 months or a year when I stopped drinking. But interestingly enough, when you go to a social setting, if you actually pay attention, you'll be surprised how many times people try to push drinks on other people. It's like the most socially acceptable thing, I
I
guess, until
experience
it's
that all the time.
it's bizarre, but what I had to come to the realization of is like, okay, it's a social pressure. They're not saying it to be malicious. They
Right,
just want to
right.
kind of create the social lubricant and make it feel comfortable. But just because it's comfortable for you does not mean it's comfortable for me. So those are two examples where I've had to shed, and grow way harder than I thought, not only
Mm,
from doing the act of itself of, cleaning up my nutrition or working out or stop drinking alcohol, that those physical acts are hard enough, but you
mhm.
also have to manage the social pressure of, the
Right.
decisions of the growth trajectory that you're on.
That's excellent to hear. And really amazing work you're doing here and just, coming to truth with your values and realizing, the path that you're on and staying true. So I really admire that. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So final question for you, Bryce, is what does it mean for you to live in your highest health?
I live in my highest health. Well, for me, like health is about frequency and vibration.
Mm,
I'm a feeler, and I love people. I love to connect with people. When I'm living at my highest health, when I'm sleeping at least 7 hours a night, when I'm getting in my workouts consistently, when my nutrition's completely on point, when I'm getting my cryo plunge, a daily basis. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I'm a fitness professional. I've done a lot of good things, but I have my off days just like anyone else. So I want to also be very clear on that. But when I'm living my perfect life, when I'm living my perfect health, and I'm really investing in myself, it's the feeling, it's the energy, it's the vibration that comes from me, and it impacts and it bounces off others. And for me, that's just, there's no better feeling. I'm a feeler. And when
mm.
I'm really, in my fitness mojo, I just feel blissful. And I guess that would be the best way to put it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I that totally resonates. I feel like everything I do these days is is substantiated by a certain energy. And I would say that's true. It's true for me inviting you on my podcast. I can totally feel your energy and just the passion you show up with. So that answer totally resonates.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Bryce. Is there anything else you want to share for our listeners? It could be in health or wealth or anything.
Well, I'll leave you with the final thought, but I just want to acknowledge you one more time. This has been a really cool experience. I've always been very fond of you, Natasha, your heart, your energy, your soul. And certainly we come from the similar cloth, working with the career development program, which typically attracts people who are like-minded, who are, growth-minded and like to travel the world and whatnot. So it's just been really unique and very an awesome experience to come full circle. So I want to thank you again for having me on.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, and this sounds a little bit rough and tough, but human nature, and I've learned this through fitness, we typically tend to take the wait and see approach. When you run a session and all of a sudden when I'm coaching and it's like, all right, people go to station A, station B, and then typically human nature just kind of like looks around, who's going to go first? And I think my parting message is, and I say this with love to all you listeners out there, but if you want success in life, if you want to live your best life, whether it be health, fitness, experiential, my friends, no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time is now. And I think that's probably my parting message, because I want you and your awesome community to continue to grow and manifest awesome things. And I'm just so grateful for you having me on today.
Thank you so much, Bryce. I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for the recognition as well. So admire everything you do. And thank you for the parting words. Don't wait. Just get out there.
Let's go.
Cool. Thank you, Bryce. I'll catch you on the other side. Thank you for listening to Highest Health. If you gained value from today's episode, leave a review, share with a friend, or post on social media. If you're interested in achieving your highest health or already pursuing it, send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you.